In this edition of the Bucs Report, we talk about the latest with Vita Vea. Will he be playing on Sunday? Then we will talk about the Bucs as they prepare to face Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. We will talk about all of that and more next on this edition of the Bucs Report. Let's go! Well, hello and welcome into this edition of the Bucs Report. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms. You can find this podcast on the Bucs Report. Check them out online at bucsreport.com. You can also find it on YouTube. Just search for the Bucs Report. And you can also find this podcast wherever you find your audio podcast. Just search for the Bucs Report podcast. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Bucs Minutecast. So in this edition of the Bucs Report, we are happy to have Whitney Holtzman. She is an NFL agent. Whitney, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm sorry you don't live here in Tampa because I know it's a lot warmer than where you are this time of year.
I wish I was in Tampa, to be honest with you. I vacationed there a couple times, and it seems like a very pleasant place to live, climate and everything here. So the Bucs are taking on Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. It's going to be a tough, it's going to be a tall task considering what this Bucs team did last week. Taking on the 49ers. It was one of those games that I considered a must-win game. And why is it a must-win? Because it's a litmus test. It's a measuring stick for what this Bucs team has. Oftentimes I hear people say, well, where they're playing this easy team, they're playing the Browns or something. I want them to play the best against the best teams because that's what you're going to have to do to win the Super Bowl. What's your assessment of this team as we stand right now, Friday, as the Bucs prepare to take on Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, two big names on the Bengals? What are your thoughts?
I think I just feel like the team is underperforming this year. I mean, at the end of the day, the best teams have consistency, and I'm just not really sure this point in the season what our identity is. I mean, I think we have a lot of star players, but it's like putting the Super Bowl team out there, but watching a different result play out. And so I think, it's hard for anyone to describe what they are at this point because we've seen flashes of greatness and that unbelievable comeback a couple weeks ago that was like, on Monday Night Football was such a thrill. And then you have, last weekend where they just get trounced. And so I think what's so frustrating for fans is they just can't wrap their head around what this team is at this point and also what to expect every week. I mean, you want to be able by this point in the season to feel like your team has an identity. And I think, people are going to show up on Sunday at Ray J and primetime game and in the afternoon, and they're, going to have no idea what they're about to see. And I think that you don't really expect that from a Tom Brady led team. And clearly he doesn't bear the brunt of what's going on, but it's like there's obviously been a lot of injuries that have affected us, but even the defense has been really disappointing. The team seems all over the place.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the tough thing. All over the place is a way to put it. I mean, Brady in week 14 at 2 interceptions, 4.6 yards per attempt, a 63.7 completion rate. Tom Brady for the season, if it ended today, 6.2 yards per attempt, the lowest of his career. What are your thoughts on Tom Brady as we look at him so far? There was an interesting article I was reading about right before I came on here with you, and it was where they were talking to Tom Brady Sr., and the question was, and I guess his worry about his son is, when is it going to be enough? He said that when he beat the Chiefs, he was talking about hanging it up, is winning the 8th Super Bowl. Is that what's going to unlock happiness in Tom Brady's heart? He gave up his marriage, in a lot of ways to Giselle because of football. He gave up a lot. When is it going to be enough for Tom Brady? And why do you think he is not performing quite the way he has in the past?
Yeah, so fun fact about living here in Tampa Bay, I was actually the person that took the video of Brady throwing the trophy at the Super Bowl boat parade. So I was the one who caught that moment, and I put it on social media, and all of a sudden all these major outlets were calling, and Tom's manager reached out, and they actually licensed the video from me to use on Tom's social media. And I think it was just another example of how exciting Tom is and just what a winner he is. I mean, you watch that whole season. He came in here in his first year, brand new team, moved his family, and he won a Super Bowl. And even the game a couple weeks ago, you watched, there was like no hope, everyone had given up. And sure enough, he leads a comeback. And I remember, as a life, we've had season tickets for the Bucs dating back my family to the 70s. So even before I was born, the old sombrero, we've been diehard fans my entire life. And I will never forget the experience that Tom gave all of us of winning the Super Bowl. And also when Adam Schefter was the one to announce his retirement, it felt like a family member died. It was so personal. Like, I took it really hard. And, I'm a professional in this industry, but as a Bucs fan, no one has had more of an impact on me than Tom. And then it was just like the greatest feeling when he came back. You feel like when he's on the field, we have the best of the best. We're always going to have a chance to win. And I just, for my business, the clients that I work with, I really pay attention to their EQ or their emotional intelligence. And I pay attention to the intangibles. And I just know when someone has what it takes to win and is a leader. And it's all about good judgment. When we drafted Jameis Winston, I said, I've never seen a great leader with bad judgment. And the one thing I know about Tom is he has excellent judgment. And so I always have faith in him. And I think he knows himself very well. His self-awareness is incredibly important. I think he knows himself really well. I think with the whole divorce situation, you're never behind closed doors. We never know the why or the reasons, but, I think everyone is blaming Tom. And I think, there's a strong possibility it could be Giselle, that she wanted to, sort of be in the spotlight and to be the one to, have all the attention again. She may not have liked the dynamic that manifested. And so we're never going to know. But Tom is very, very close with his family members. He's very thoughtful. So he's not the type to pick football over a relationship. I think that, in my opinion, just looking at the situation, that she probably wanted this well before he decided to retire and then come back from football, because by that point, she was so done that had to start a long time ago. I think she kind of wanted to probably start fresh with her own career. I have no doubt. I mean, we are all human beings. You cannot separate what you're going through off the field with who you are on the field. You are not separately a player and a human. You are both combined. And so I had no doubt that whatever Tom was going through, we found out later was a divorce, was affecting how he was feeling, and just that overall feeling of comfort and confidence when he walks onto the field. And I think we saw his play start to get better, but there's a lot of there's injuries this year. The defense isn't playing up to speed. We have a new coaching staff. And so there's just, there's sometimes where maybe Tom's throws haven't been the best, but I just have to tell you, I believe so strongly in him that I don't think any of this has to do with him. I think it's just the pieces surrounding him, and he can only control so much. And I think he'll know very well when he's done. And he's always known what's best, and he's had a lot of success to back it up. And so when he says, I can't do this anymore, he really knows. And that's our cue to say, okay, he's done.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, Giselle knew who he was when, what he was an NFL player. He loves football. He is the ultimate competitor. And I know that there's talk out there that she wanted to get back to her modeling career. And I mean, I guess I can understand that to an extent, but I mean, she fell in love with Tom Brady, the football player, and he is the ultimate competitor. There is a video circulating online of him on the sidelines. I just have an audio clip here, but he is lit up and he expects a lot from his players, like in this clip.
Gotta be better than that! That ain't gonna win! That's not gonna win! That's good enough to suck right there! Let's go, fellas! Let's go! Hey, it ain't that hard for us to fight harder, right? For us, let's fight harder. Unless we want to quit. If we want to quit, let's go again. Let's fight.
So that's what you're dealing with Tom Brady out on the field. Sometimes you hear him yelling and you don't really know what he's talking about. So you get a little bit of an idea about how motivating, for lack of a better word, he is. And he expects a lot from his players, as he should, because he is the GOAT. He is the greatest of all time. All right, so after the break here, we are going to talk about the Bucs as they prepare to face Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Do they have enough in the tank to take on that team? We'll talk about that next. All right, welcome back into this edition of the Bucs Report Podcast. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. In this episode, we are joined by Whitney Holtzman, an NFL agent. It doesn't get any bigger than that, does it? In this next segment here, we are going to talk about the Bucs as they prepare to face Joe Burrow and the Bengals, the number 1 overall pick in the 2020 draft, named 2021 NFL Comeback Player of the Year after recovering from a season-ending left knee injury in 2020, playing without 3 of his top 4 pass catchers. Burrow completed 18 of 33 for 239 yards and 2 touchdowns and 1 interception in Sunday's win over the Browns. So it is going to be a tall task for this Bucs team to win against the Bengals. You know, there's been a lot of highs and lows this season. You know, there were a couple games or several games, I guess, throughout the season where I thought the Bucs should have won. You took a look at the Browns, you look at the Panthers, the Steelers. They found a way to lose games that were must-win games. How does this Buccaneers team find a way to win against a Bengals team that is playing at the top of their game? It's going to be tough. You know, that we know what they have in the tank. Do the Bucs have what it takes to beat them?
And I think every week the Bucs show up and have the best chance to win of any team. We basically have the majority of our Super Bowl team returning. And oh, by the way, we have the greatest of all time at quarterback. So I think that's what's been so frustrating for fans is the inaction. I mean, even the Monday night game, you know, for the first 3.9 quarters, it was just so aggravating because it was just, you know, inaction after inaction, like just make some progress happen. And so I think that we always have a chance to win. You know, I've learned from working with my clients that 97% of this game is mental. And, you know, whether it be guys who were feeling, you know, okay, made in the shade after the Super Bowl, or their brands were getting bigger, or they're used to this and, you know, they could take their foot off the gas. I mean, there's always someone ready to come speed right by you and to embarrass you. I mean, I do think, you know, Tom had, you know, they talked about on TV, he had 100 family members and friends at the 49ers game, and, you know, he got completely embarrassed. So Tom is someone who keeps receipts, and, you know, there's always a fire lit under him. So I would think after the performance last week, and frankly, I think the leaders of the defense have a lot of pride and humility as well. And I think, you know, that giving up 35 points, that they were super embarrassed. So I think, you know, one would guess they will come back strong, but, you know, you have to really stay honed in. You can't be distracted. You can't think, oh, you've been here before. You know, you're going to be okay. The mental part of being disciplined for this team is what's been lacking. I mean, you know, we saw the Donovan Smith penalty where, you know, for the Mike Evans touchdown, and that was something where it just made fans want to rip their head out. I mean, that guy's a veteran, you know, he's been on the team a while, he knows what to do, and that was a silly penalty. It's those kinds of things, or, you know, people stopping and running their routes. I mean, if we just pay attention and stay focused and have the tunnel vision like we did in that Super Bowl run, I don't think anyone could beat us. But if we don't have those things, we're going to get beat because, you know, a lot of people compare Joe Burrow to Tom Brady. He's sort of the next generation. And he has, you know, everyone saw his Heisman speech and just how he's carried himself. He really has the intangibles. And that's much more scary to me for an opponent than someone who just brings the skills.
Yeah, and I mean, it's going to be a tough out. You know, I think that the Bucs were riding a high after they beat the Saints, you know, a division, you know, foe that they've played. You know, they've always struggled, and it's always given the Buccaneers fits over the years playing the Saints. And then they go in and they fall flat on their face against the 49ers. So it is going to be a tough out, shall we say. Jamar Chase, wide receiver, that is going to be a tough one. The corners are going to have to be on their game. Chase had 10 catches for 119 yards and a touchdown in Sunday's win over the Browns. He also had 1 carry for 6 yards. The Bengals 2021 first-round pick won NFL Rookie of the Year after putting together perhaps the top rookie season by wide receiver. His 1,455 receiving yards in 2021 were a single-season Bengals Bengals record and the second most ever by an NFL rookie. You know, the Bengals, I would say, are not, historically a great football team, but with Joe Burrow as the quarterback of the team, they are a lot better. With Jamar Chase on the team, they are a lot better. It seems to me that the corners for the Buccaneers are going to have their work cut out for them, trying to do coverage on Jamar Chase. Do you think, there's been a lot of injuries at the corner position, Sean Murphy, Bunting, and the like. Do you think that they will be able to take on someone like Jamar Chase?
I mean, I think, like I said, we're fully capable. I think it's still a lot of those guys who are on the Super Bowl team. And this team that we have now knows what they need to do, and they know how to win. It's just a matter of, whether they execute. I mean, I think as just a fan sitting watching this year, we've given up a ton of plays on third down. It feels like we'll have the team stop and then it's third down and all of a sudden we give up 3rd and 11. And I think those plays are really what have been the turning point in the games. And I'm, hopeful that we stay disciplined all the way to 4th down. And obviously we know he's a threat. We know he's a problem. So the corners need to stay on him. I feel like that there's been so many times this year where we just look at the TV and say, well, that guy's wide open. So of course he caught it and ran to the end zone. So just making sure that we pay attention to our coverages is really important. And then, on the other side of the ball, Tom needs time to throw. He needs the offensive line to be able to protect him because it doesn't matter if we're protecting Jamar Chase if we're not, able to score any points. And so we need to make sure that we're really, paying attention to our assignments on both sides of the ball. The other thing is I want to say I saw a stat that talked about how the secondary had more tackles last week than the defensive line. I mean, the thing is that if our safeties and corners are out there tackling, then that means there's going to be people that are wide open. So our D line needs to do their job so that our safeties and corners can, run like the wind up and down the field. And I think what's frustrating too at times is we know someone like Jamar Chase is the threat, and then we watch touchdown after touchdown being given up to him. So what is super important, I mean, is making sure we never hear his name throughout the game. I think the other guys on the team, are clearly easier to cover. They're less explosive. And so, making sure that we have 1 to 2 people at all times on Jamar Chase, because we cannot let that guy be open.
Yeah, I mean, and we can never discredit, or we can never think that Tom Brady can't do it. If we want to, I mean, there's many moments throughout his career, but looking back for me, it was the Patriots taking on the Falcons about 5 years ago, one of the biggest comebacks ever in Super Bowl history. So I ultimately think that obviously Brady has the pedigree of winning. He's got 7 Super Bowls, for God's sake, so he can do it. All right, so after the break here, we are going to talk about the coaching situation for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yes, they're often the fall guy, and it's no exception in this case. We'll talk about that next. All right, welcome back into this edition of the Bucs Report. In this edition, we are joined by Whitney Holtzman, an NFL agent. It's not often you get a chance to talk to someone that's an agent in the NFL, so it's just a real treat to have her on the show. In this last segment here, we're going to talk about Todd Bowles and Byron Leftwich. And, taking a look at Todd Bowles, he made some questionable decisions this year, about not going for it and poor clock management. Do you think that the onus, that the great, why the Bucs are failing is due in part to Todd Bowles' coaching style?
Interesting. I mean, I'm a pretty strong believer in Todd Bowles. I think I have a lot more questions about Byron Leftwich. I think the majority of the season when I've watched Byron's play calling, it's like, oh, guess what? We ran on first down. Like, we are just so predictable and sort of mundane, and we're getting more and more people back, from recovering from their injuries, and that's going to help. But I mean, if we're at home figuring out what the play is, the opposing team sure figured out the call also. And I think that the play calling was really hurting us. Again, I'm not in the room. That's just my 2 cents as a fan and an observer. In terms of Todd Bowles, I think he's because you have to strike the balance of being a player's coach, but also making sure that they respect you. And I think he struck that balance really well. I think clock management, not calling those timeouts when the game went into overtime and then we ended up losing, to the Browns. Like, that game, to me, the end of that game, we're sitting here yelling at the TV, call timeout. And, it's just like, let the game management slip. And so that he was fully responsible for that, without a doubt. And I think we could have and should have won that game if he had handled it differently. But I think that, honestly, I think that the best quarterback, player, coach, and play caller is Tom Brady. And so it's almost like, all right, everyone else should be secondary and just let him do the job because he knows what to do. And from what I've seen from the coaching staff, I haven't been overly impressed. And so, I think him actually having more of a role would be super helpful.
Because that's been, and I do this podcast all the time. And my big question was, why did the Buccaneers squander the last year of Tom Brady with the Buccaneers ostensibly, and perhaps in the NFL with an inexperienced coach? And oftentimes people will say, well, he's not inexperienced. He was a head coach for 3 years in the Jets. That doesn't really mean anything to me. When Bruce Arians decided that he was not going to be the head coach anymore, it makes sense to me that they would have gone out and sought out a proven winner. You have this great quarterback, and you have, I'm going to go ahead and say it, an inexperienced head coach. And look how it's done this year. There's been highs and lows, and the reason that the Buccaneers are in first place in the NFC South is because the rest of the NFC South is horrible. What is your assessment on why the Bucs went all in on Todd Bowles? It just seemed like some bargain shopping, perhaps. Let's just take that coach and just bump him up a level, and we can save some money. It seems a bit ridiculous in hindsight.
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, we had Jameis Winston before, and then, we got the opportunity to sign Tom Brady. He picked us. And so, for a city like Tampa and a team like the Bucs, it's like the best thing that's ever happened to us here. And I think the Bucs are aware of that. So my guess is decisions are not made without his input. So I think if he had stomped his feet and said, absolutely not, I won't, I won't play if it's for Todd Bowles. I mean, he had to have some sign off, and them having a good relationship, is obviously really important. So I'm sure he had plenty of say in the transition. So I think, again, if he were opposed to it, they would have made changes also mid-season. I mean, I think everyone knows he's the winner in the building. So, if he says jump, they jump. And so my guess is that he's on board with all of this. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened and changes would have been made. And I think, sort of the amazing part that you touched on of this whole situation is that we're somehow still in first place. And I think that point is so important, because as frustrating as things have been, if you start to dwell in that and you start to let it take over, that is so unproductive. You can be disappointed. You can dwell in the, games we've thrown away, or, just the trompings that we, went through last weekend. And I think if you focus on that and hone in on it, you're using your energy not productively. Like, we somehow miraculously have a chance to still win this division, even at the point that we're at, the ups and downs that we've had. And I think it is so key more than ever. Like, hopefully we got all the, bad judgment and undisciplined play out of our system. And from now on, we're able to just bring our best performance to the table, because what a shame it would be if fans, and the whole team has gone through, a quote unquote disappointing season, but they still have a chance somehow to win this division and to, win home field advantage in the playoffs, and that they squander that. So I think it's just really important, instead of focusing on the disappointments, to say we kind of have a clean slate. We control our destiny. Like, we cannot, we need to take everything that we messed up on and use that as learning, so we finish strong. And to me, like, that is the entire narrative.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, again, it's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking. There were times where it seemed like it was a good fix, but ultimately for me, the way we see the inconsistency all season, it seems like there would have been a better choice. So, Whitney, thanks for joining us today. Why don't you tell us a little bit, you are an NFL agent. That's a big deal. It's not every day you get to talk to someone that's an NFL agent. Also, social victories. Tell us a little bit about you and any kind of projects that you want to promote or anything like that.
Oh, that's so nice. Well, basically, my whole goal in becoming an agent and everything I'm trying to accomplish in this industry is, to make it more normal, place for when women after me, especially women, but younger people come along. I mean, typically, I'll go to pro days and I'm in the room and it's 300 men and me. People say, are you the girl agent? And so my whole goal, I say to my clients, instead of looking at football as your purpose, how can it be your platform to your purpose? And for me, I want to normalize women becoming agents, and also, just to help teach people about what I learned. So I wrote a book called You Are the First You. If you can see it, it's on Amazon, and it tells the story of my career journey and all the lessons I learned along the way. But basically, I started out by helping players build their brands, and I looked at myself and thought, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to be any sort of player representative in this industry? And because I'm not a guy, I'm not what a typical agent looks like. And then I realized, wait a minute, how can I use what my quote unquote disadvantage as my superpower, and use that to be able to find the right clients for me. So I started learning, well, a lot of my clients were raised by single moms. So in their world, women get the job done. And, a lot of them, sprung into adulthood at a very young age. And I brought the nurturing approach. They've come over for Thanksgiving. I've helped them renovate their houses. I've gone shopping for engagement rings with their partners, help them. So, they know. I had one client say to me, you're the first day-to-day teammate that I've ever had. And so I just kind of realized, players had agents and the teams had marketing departments, but no one was proactively helping these guys tell their stories. And the thing is, for their whole lives, they've been called an athlete or a football player. But I say for your mental well-being, you cannot define yourself by something that's temporary. So I sit down with them and use my marketing background to help them figure out, okay, who are you off the field that's going to last forever? And how can we maximize your playing time to create opportunities so that when your plan B comes along and football ends, it's such a smooth transition, you don't even realize it. So, they jokingly call me corporate mom, and 100% of my NFL clients have second careers off the field. I have a financial literacy professor at Penn, broadcasters, real estate agents, you name it. And actually, they were the ones who pushed me to become an agent, because they would kind of say, well, our agents do our contract and then disappear, and we have no support. So normally you have to have a graduate degree, which I don't have. So I petitioned the NFLPA to take the exam. And basically for those who already had the graduate degree, they had about a year and a half to study. And my petition was approved 3 weeks before the exam. Pass rate my year was about 38.8%. And so I was certified in the fall of last year. And so you basically have 3 years to sign a client to an active roster. And so I've overcome so many hurdles. And I think for guys who are really focused on their off the field initiatives, who want to build a brand, most people become agents and then try and figure out the marketing because they know it's necessary. Well, I was in marketing for 10 years and then became an agent. And, I mentioned this to you at some point, there's something like over 1,000 male agents and around, from what I understand, about 30 female agents. The percentage is so small. So I always say, sort of, no matter what happens to me, I just want to make this industry a better place for the women who come after me.
Yeah, so just a real true trailblazer, I guess you could say. And congratulations on your many accomplishments. I kind of read your bio a little bit. I mean, that's just kind of skimming over it. There's a whole lot of other things I read about you that you've accomplished. So just a real honor for us to have you on the show today, Whitney.
Oh, I loved being on. You asked super great questions. And the thing is, the reason that I, ended up working in this field is because I'm so passionate about football. And I always attribute me being an agent to the fact that I went to the Bucs games growing up. And, that is what made me fall in love with sports. And so there's nothing I love more. Like, talking to you is the core of why I'm so passionate about, what I'm doing day in and day out. And so this was a big treat for me. And, any time that you want to chat again, I'm happy to come back.
All right. Thank you very much, Whitney. All right. Once again, thank you for joining us on this edition of the Bucs Report, and I'll talk to you again next time.